Welcome to the What If podcast with your hosts, Spencer Worth Davis and Ryan Copperrood.
It's the What If podcast. My name is Ryan Copperrood.
How the hell are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
What's your name? For those that don't know you.
My name's Spencer.
Hi, Spencer.
What's happening?
We have a friend in the room.
Hey, guys.
We get to call you a recurring guest now.
Yeah, I guess so.
Unless
but
we
no
put
one's
this one out
heard
before
the
the other
first
one.
episode.
Or
so.
that's true. That's true. Or
I guess this one's coming out second.
or if we decide the other one's just garbage after we do this one, or vice versa, maybe this will never see the light of day. But if
That's
it does, tell people who you are.
My name is Max. I'm the what was my title last time?
You got a title last time?
Well,
I gave myself a title.
Oh, even better.
Max hit me up afterwards and he said he wants to be the
beanbag philosopher. No, I was
Yeah.
got it.
Yes,
Yeah, that's right.
recurring beanbag philosopher.
Perfect.
Yes.
This is a good episode for it.
We went from armchairs to beanbags to potentially floor. I think
We're getting out there. We're getting out there.
Yeah, we're
Or
gonna
we
go.
only talk about out there stuff with me, I guess.
Yeah, well,
That's kind of the podcast.
That's just what you do.
That's the idea, yeah.
we go pretty far.
Well, you
in
should
general.
release the podcast so I can listen to some of
Hey,
them.
it's
Working on it.
Working on it, baby. It's incoming. Well, we're gonna go the opposite of the floor, and we're gonna go way up into space on the What If podcast today. We're gonna talk about what if we communicated with extraterrestrials.
E.T., be good.
I really need to rewatch it.
Dude,
It's for real been over.
What
a
are you
decade.
doing an hour from now?
Spencer?
I just rented it on YouTube only to pull that audio from it, so we might as well watch E.T. when we're done.
that 2-second clip.
Yeah.
Does every episode start with you telling Ryan he needs to watch a movie? Is that,
Well, if Ryan would ever watch a fucking movie, then maybe I wouldn't have to.
That's a good point. I don't watch a
We're
lot of movies, man.
We're doing an episode about extraterrestrial life. You haven't seen E.T.
I have seen E.T. I just haven't seen it in like over a decade.
Okay.
Have you watched
haven't
E.T. recently?
You haven't recently cried at the part of E.T. where they take him away. You
No,
haven't
but I
seen.
vividly remember crying real hard
You
when it
haven't
happened.
seen Arrival.
I have not seen Arrival yet.
Okay, hold on, because it's kind of on the same theme. Have you watched?
Don't be the dude
have
who
you watched
berates-
Total Recall yet?
Have you watched Total Recall in the
Like
last
you
month?
promised you were going
No.
to.
Doug, I
Okay.
gave you a month to watch Total Recall and you didn't do it.
Hey, I didn't promise I was gonna watch it. I just said I'd never seen it. It wasn't. I didn't like make a commitment to seeing it.
Disappointed.
All right, be disappointed, but
Fair.
don't be disappointed in aliens because fucking we've talked about aliens like here and there on the podcast, not like thoroughly. But today we're gonna talk about aliens not from the perspective of like what if they came down, what if they showed up in your house. We've talked a little bit about what if they show up in your house, but we're gonna talk about aliens related to like talking to them, or I guess more specifically the ways that we think we should and the way that we have communicated with aliens and the way that we are being prescribed to communicate with aliens by people who are apparently versed in the subject of what that should look like, which is weird as a concept in general.
Yeah, because no one is, except maybe the people who have been abducted by him.
Right.
That's like the closest you could get to being versed in.
Right. But like the UN has a body, like, well, they agreed on like whatever it is, the Outer Space Treaty.
Yeah.
And there's like some language in that about like what we as a planet agree upon. If
I just think it's
aliens
really
came down.
really funny to like try and make any sort of plans about something that you literally have no idea what it would be, or if you would even like recognize it or know that it's here, or
Right. Well, so here's a question to start, actually, for both of you. Like, is it asinine to even, like, the fact that there have been preparations and attempts, is it asinine to even, like, have those conversations based on the fact that we literally have no evidence of this being real at all?
even though we're about to talk about it for an hour,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think the answer is probably yes.
Hopefully, or what are we doing here?
No, but I mean, like, the fact that the UN is, like, having these regular conversations about, like, you know.
I mean, at a minimum, it's probably like a critical thinking puzzle that addresses some other things.
That's fair.
As well.
Yeah, as like a thought experiment, it's interesting. Trying to come up with any sort of actual policy, I think, is pretty pointless because you don't know. I think everybody has some vision of what an alien would be, but we have no idea because we've never for sure encountered one.
Right.
I mean,
Nor would we
pretty-
necessarily know if we did.
we're very confined to our perception of what like a sentient being is,
It's-
based on what can happen here and then a little bit of our imagination and
It's usually just like a slight variation on a human, honestly.
For sure.
Which,
is kind of silly.
yeah, there's no reason to believe that that's what life. And like, we don't even really have a good definition of life.
True.
Like the whole concept of Gaia, like the planet itself could be alive
Right.
and fits a lot of the criteria for life. We didn't at one point think that bacteria was alive, and then that perspective changed. Like,
Right.
we couldn't for most of human history, like even see bacteria. There was something alive on and in us that we didn't recognize as being alive.
Right.
Like, what's to say something from another planet would look like some version of human beings?
It's sort of like how do you invent antibiotics if you don't know that bacteria is a real thing? Like you can't prevent or prohibit something if you don't actually understand what that thing is or is capable of. Which I think too, like the ET clip, like is represented by all of our media. Like our Hollywood has everything from like Independence Day to ET, which is like friendly buddy who drinks beer in your kitchen and goes bike riding with you, or like we're gonna murder every single last living being here.
Well,
like our imagination runs that whole gamut because we don't have any actual.
And it's funny to try and come up with policy when it's like, well, what if they don't have ears? What if they literally can't take
Hear
in
you.
any of the like wavelengths of light or sound that we do, and we just forget language or thought or anything? We just literally have no way to communicate with them.
Yeah.
Or
Or you can go Space Odyssey on it, and it's like it's like not a living thing anymore.
It's like a universal
force.
consciousness
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. It's something imperceptible.
or we're the bacteria on the planet that is the atom in the universe of the body of God.
It's like the scene in Men in Black where the cat has the planet on its
Yeah, Orion's belt.
Orion's belt on its collar.
Mm-hmm.
That's us, y'all.
I feel like this isn't what we had on our outline.
I mean, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, I think it's good setup because it's all good to think about as we go through what it is, what we still want to go through, which is like, regardless of everything we've just said, there are bodies of people who are like, even though we're like, we don't really know what would happen, there are still people who are like, well, if it does happen, we should probably like have at least had a single thought about this, or like maybe talk to each other about like who knows? What if what if one day one of the satellite arrays that are, I mean, there's many of them like all across the world. Like, what if one day one gets like a da dit da beat, and all of a sudden we're like, oh shit,
The wow signal.
the wow signal? What's the wow signal?
What?
What's the
God
wow signal?
damn it, Ryan. Did no homework for this episode, bro. You didn't watch Arrival.
Hey Spencer, for people who don't know what the wow signal is, what's the wow signal?
Donnie, you're out of your element.
The wow signal was recorded by SETI in 1970s. It was a much louder than normal signal that repeated, and it's called the wow signal because the guy who recorded it circled it and in the margins of the printout wrote wow next to it. And I think it turned out to be, it's like a microwave inside the building or something. It was definitely not aliens.
Wow.
Anyway,
Well, they did a bad job then
SETI,
of detecting aliens.
you just described SETI.
SETI, for those that don't know, is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. They're located in
California somewhere.
somewhere.
In
and
the
it's-
movie Contact. Have you seen
Oh,
Contact?
yeah, I have seen Contact.
Okay, cool. You're
That's
allowed
another-
to keep talking on this podcast.
That's another one I need to rewatch, though, because I remember loving it and not having seen it in a while. Well, speaking, I guess, then, as a segue of groups that are trying to figure out the communication thing, in prep for this, I did prep, even if it's not enough for Spencer.
You're just supposed to watch sci-fi movies and then talk shit. I think
Talk
that's what
shit.
this podcast is.
Again, this is the amount of scientific research we do sometimes. I stumbled across an interesting paper, which was put out by a couple of researchers at Penn State University, and it was put out in partnership with NASA's Planetary Science Division. It came out in 2011.
Never mind.
And this paper was called "Would Contact with Extraterrestrials Benefit or Harm Humanity? A Scenario Analysis." And I don't know who or why this was exactly prompted, but essentially what they were doing was if SETI catches a signal, or if one day the skies open up and there's a fucking spaceship and like they drop down, how could that look for us? And what do we as like a body of researchers and NASA scientists like sort of prescribe in the name of those three scenarios that they sort of break down?
I think it's also, I'm just speculating, but I think it's also probably driven by the fact that there's been some controversy around whether we should be trying to initiate contact with other civilizations by blasting radio waves at them.
Yes.
And like Stephen Hawking has been pretty vocal in advocating against that, in that like that's basically a beacon for other civilizations to be like, hey, here we are. Look at all the cool stuff we have.
Right.
Come, like, kill us and take it if you want.
Which they do outline in here actually.
Okay. I'll shut up and let you describe it.
No, it's okay. And also too, one of the things that they actually, I do remember now, they were saying about like writing this paper is like the discovery of planets from the Kepler telescopes have increased, not exponentially, but like pretty significantly ever since like, I don't know what it was, like 2009 or something like that, until like 2016. They've gone up and up and up and up, and like we're discovering way more and more and more planets, and
it's also
many more that
like
appear habitable, whatever.
A fraction of a percent of what's probably actually out there.
Right.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah, go
this
ahead.
might send us off.
No, do
a
it.
little bit.
Perfect.
Let's go.
But in line with the film we were just talking about, it made me think like, okay, would you rather live a full, healthy life and like die when you're 80, let's say, or when you're 55, some crazy shit happens and like aliens end up here and it turns into a disaster. But I don't know. It's a pretty eventful thing to take place in your life.
Option 2 all the way.
Yeah, I already know that's Spencer's answer. Like,
Can that happen tomorrow, please?
Yeah.
in like the hypotheticals of like, if you could.
Was that hypothetical direct enough? I feel like it wasn't meandering. Okay.
No,
Okay,
that was
good.
very direct.
Would you cut 30 years off your life if it meant that you got to see first contact with aliens?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, oh man.
I would for sure.
am I-
It'd
am
be
I
scary as hell, but it'd be some answers that you're looking for, some
Yeah.
questions that you're asking your whole life answered.
I will go on the record again as saying like if aliens showed up and wanted to abduct me, I'm voluntarily going with it.
Yeah, for sure. I think your goal about doing this whole podcast is just to put that out into the sphere enough that
Dude,
they
this
hear
shit
you.
is gonna get what we really need to do
And they're like-
is clean this up just a little bit so it gets on the radio and gets broadcast out into space, so that eventually the aliens can hear it and be like, all right, tight, we know. And then like
They're like, why are we pulling these people kicking and screaming from their
We just-
beds? This dude
right.
is all about it.
we just got to geotag the studio on every episode so that they can come find me.
Come get me! I'm right here. Oh man, am I
Right.
assured death?
I don't know.
That's a good question. Are we?
'Cause
Yeah, are we
not
going like Men
immediately.
in Black scenario or
Not immediately. No.
Okay.
Not immediately, but it probably doesn't turn out well. let's
Yeah.
say.
Okay.
And by Men in Black, I mean that other alien movie with Will Smith.
What?
I meant Independence Day, and I said Men in Black.
Oh,
Sorry, carry on.
Got it. Oh, got it. Yes, two alien movies with Will Smith in them. If I'm not assured death, like if there's a fighting chance that I can like participate in this new society, however it forms, I'm interested in that attempt. But if it's like I get to see that aliens show up and they just fucking nuke us all, I'm not really interested in learning that to be turned into like
More like
feed instantly, you know what I mean?
society becomes anarchy because of this, and things just deteriorate. But they're not like
I might
kill-
take the society turns to anarchy without the aliens option
Yeah,
if that's on the
right.
table.
I mean, yeah, like I'm not mad about that possibility in the light of like that conversation for sure. I don't know. I mean, like you said, like it'd be fucking terrifying for sure.
Well, maybe
Which part?
we have no idea what aliens would be doing here.
Could be real tight.
So it could be okay.
If you had watched Arrival, they were trying to make us all. Sorry.
So this actually is a really good segue back into this paper. I'm not just
Okay.
redirecting.
us back.
But so and I'll try to break this down actually really simply because it's like a 48-page paper, and I'm obviously not going to go
way too
through.
many.
It's a lot of pages, but basically, and this is going to seem like common sense, but just go with it here because this is like sort of what they're just trying to do is break it down into like some layman's terms of like how could this go for us? And the 3 ways they put it are beneficial, neutral, or harmful, right? So it could be cool, it could be like meh, or it could be like oh fuck, right?
Neutral seems super unlikely.
And they admit, and they exactly
Life is pretty much the same.
meh, whatever.
The aliens showed up and no one really cared. I mean, I guess that's what the ET scenario is, right? It's like one little guy rides around in a bike basket and then we all forget about it.
Well, they definitely cared, man. They definitely cared while he was here. They were freaking out. while he was
4
here.
kids did.
4 kids, and then they put this whole house into like.
All right,
you
whatever.
know.
Give us the scenarios. You're right.
The neutral one, and they actually kind of explain what they think of as so beneficial. They're talking about philosophical implications could be seen as a benefit. If they were cooperative, you could if they were cooperative and there was any level of communication, there could be advancements in science and mathematics, assistance in like global catastrophe, whether that be like global warming or whatever else. And then also they put, which I think is interesting, they call it uncooperative ET, which is like they put it in the beneficial category, but if they were like aliens that were like uncooperative, but we like defeated them, they put that in the benefit category for 2 reasons.
I guess I could
aliens?
see it.
For 2 reasons. No, like we fight back against uncooperative ET. And it's a triumph of the humankind over an advancement from outside, uniting mankind against like what we now understand as the new other.
Right.
Or
We all come together to fuck up the aliens.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And or the other benefit they said was with a defeat would come the reverse engineering of any technology that we could see or feel or touch or get our hands on.
And according to who you ask, that shit already happened.
Right. Which we can definitely get to.
Shout out to Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar was building UFOs back in the 70s.
I bet Bob Lazar has an equally cool bio photo as that other dude.
Do you know that story?
No.
God damn, dude.
Dude, you read way more alien books than anyone I've ever met. Don't play like I'm the dude who doesn't know what I'm talking about.
to be on a podcast about aliens. All right, so what's the neutral scenario? Because that sounds really unlikely.
So neutral is we could communicate with them or be aware that they existed, but they would be essentially invisible or like uncontactable.
So like snakes?
That still sounds pretty positive.
They're just like another animal on Earth now?
No. It's more like in the situation where like we received some sort of like patterned signal from a faraway place. What?
Nothing, keep going.
What are you laughing about?
Finish. Now I got a really funny scenario.
It's just like a patterned sound coming from a far off place that we can't decipher, we can't really respond to because it's so far away from. We don't know how to get there. They're not coming to us. Like they put that in sort of like the neutral and different category. It's not like we're gaining anything from it, but it's not like it's harming us. It's just sort of like information that ET is a thing.
I was envisioning it as like they were here and we were somehow neutral about it. Like a gray alien sits down next to you at the bar. You try and say something to him. He's like, and you're just like, whatever.
Yeah.
This is a completely
Fuck that
neutral
guy.
encounter.
That guy.
This guy seems okay. I think even if it was the like we received some message that we somehow knew for sure was intelligent and extraterrestrial, but it was 100 million light years away and we couldn't do anything about it, or that civilization was like no longer there or whatever. I think philosophically that still changes.
It's still beneficial.
So much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And
That
that's why you
changes-
said, right, Max, you were like, I would still put that in the beneficial category.
Yeah. I mean, that changes our whole
I don't want to speak for you.
Correct. I
perspective
did
of,
say that.
of science.
It's recorded. You can go back and listen to it.
I meant more like I didn't want to put your
Correct.
spin on it.
So
yeah, you're right.
I guess I wouldn't see that as neutral still. And like that's gonna mess up everybody's religion.
I guess,
man.
I guess in the grand scheme of like of the needle of like, does this benefit society or harm society? They put that in the neutral, as in like, whether it doesn't. We don't necessarily gain anything tangible, even though I do think like, yes, philosophically, I think it's really interesting, and logistically, I think it's really interesting.
Well, and it would depend more on the individual person in terms of how they
Got it. We're just clowning the shit out of this list right now.
No, it's all good. And then the other one is obviously harmful, which is either intentional harm or unintentional harm.
here to take our job.
Obviously, it's like everything that you can think of in all of the terrifying alien movies.
Blowing up the White House with lasers.
Eat us, enslave us, attack us, blow up the White House with lasers, mine us for resources.
You ever seen? I'm just gonna keep asking you about sci-fi.
Dude, is
shit
this
because
like a
it's fun.
Have You Seen It podcast?
Yeah,
What the
it is
fuck?
now.
This isn't the What If podcast. This is the Duh Ryan. Why haven't you seen this movie?
Has Ryan seen it? Twilight Zone, To Serve Man.
I haven't seen that episode. I mean, I've watched
You know
episodes of the Twilight Zone.
Do you know the whole context is like the aliens show up and we can't really communicate with them, but this guy sneaks onto their spaceship and they have this book that's like it says to serve man, and so everybody's like, oh cool, they're here to help us and like enlighten us, blah blah. And it turns out to be a cookbook.
Cool.
And apparently humans are just like especially tasty and rare throughout the universe.
And this is how you serve
I've
man
not seen that one.
on a plate.
It's a good one.
That's tight.
Anyway, yeah, they might be here to eat us and take our jobs.
Yes, 100%. This one I think is kind of interesting. They talk about unintentional harm as like an invasive species. So like their unintentional harm would be they're like here to say what's up and interested in meeting us, but also they bring
Smallpox.
biological, exactly whatever shit from a faraway place.
They didn't wash their blankets before they put them on the ship.
They did not wash their alien blankets. So those are the three scenarios that they break down. It's beneficial, neutral, and harmful. And obviously we can kind of all like logistically figure those out. But I think it's an interesting breakdown.
Is there a scenario where they don't care about humans and they're just here to talk to the dolphins?
No, not in this.
I would maybe add that when the UN like rewrites these.
Would that be beneficial or neutral?
Probably neutral. Well, they might like unite and take over.
Yeah, I don't know, man. They were here for like a second, but they just been hanging out in the ocean. Like, they haven't talked to anybody yet since. Like, they don't come out.
USOs.
That's all they do. So if you guys are down, they have a couple. They have quote immediate practical recommendations for humanity, which sounds very intense.
Everyone should have this like on their fridge, you know.
And there are three related
Be
to
posted in a public place within the workplace,
like in subways and stuff like that. Just like
that.
I know you
Right
were
next
talking
to
about the New
OSHA
York
posting.
subway, but for a second I thought about like the subway sandwich.
both for sure.
Okay,
Subway, eat this.
eat this. So and this is actually gonna probably help us too because we've already talked about some of the stuff. We're gonna talk about more of this stuff. But recommendation number 1: messages to extraterrestrials should be written cautiously. For example, prior messages we've sent, which we'll talk about in a second as well, have included details of human biology, such as numbers 1 through 10 and the form and structure of our DNA. However, details about our biology, though seemingly harmless, may actually help ETI to cause us harm. A malicious ETI listener may use a message about human biology to design a potent biological weapon for use against Earth. Since these messages will ultimately be sent towards unknown ETI, we cannot know whether or not they will be received by malicious ETI, and therefore caution is warranted.
Maybe that's how the whole like abduction and anal probing thing started. Like we sent out too much information, and the ET were finally like, we finally figured out where their buttholes are.
We finally know where to put it. So there's one thing which again, like we've talked about, the possibility of being like, if we're gonna put stuff out there, if we're asking to be talked to, we should like be aware of what we're actually asking for. Cover your recommendation number 2: avoid giving off the appearance of being a rapidly expansive civilization. I actually find this kind of interesting.
How does one do that?
If an ETI perceives humanity as such, they may be inclined to attempt a preemptive strike against us so as to prevent us from growing into a threat that extraterrestrial intelligence in other galaxies may fear. An ecosystem valuing universalist ETI may also observe humanity's ecological destructive tendencies and may observe our tendencies and wipe out humanity in order to preserve the Earth system as a whole. So they might actually like if we show them that we're like encompassing our own planet and looking to expand further, they might see that as a threat.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
This like that makes sense, but it's all predicated on us being able to communicate with them somehow. Like try and describe that concept to a gorilla.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like we can't communicate with most of the species on our own planet.
But
how would we convey something like somewhat nuanced like that to an entirely different species?
I think the idea would be more like we have policies as like in the state of Minnesota, we have policies related to how many deer you can kill each year, depending on how the deer population is expanding in the state. You know, like we
But the
see
deer don't know about our policies.
right. But what they're saying is the more we're like, we are venturers into space and we are looking to land and populate Mars, if we actually are like showing off those sort of like communicative tendencies.
But that's what I'm saying. We're assuming it will be perceived in the way that humans would perceive it, and we have no way of knowing if that would be the case.
I know exactly what you're saying. Like what we're putting out there is like so unlikely to even be understood that these worries seem like a little bit silly somehow.
I get that. These are recommendations from two guys at Penn State, and
I'm not
a couple
shitting on.
NASA
I just
dudes.
like I always wonder.
They seem
Like we have
paranoid.
such an incredibly like within our really limited frame of reference, it makes sense.
Yes,
And that's all you can really plan for because that is our entire frame of reference.
Right.
But the odds that whatever we find would fit within that framework seem really small to me.
I'm with that.
Anyway,
Final recommendation is that preparations for extraterrestrial encounters should consider the full breadth of possible encounter scenarios. Indeed, perhaps the central conclusion of this analysis presented here is that ETI contact could proceed in a wide range of ways, and it is inappropriate and inadequate to blindly assume that any one specific scenario would result from contact. Until such contact occurs, we simply do not know what would happen. Given the uncertainty, the broad scenario analysis presented here is an important step towards helping us think through and prepare for possible contact, which I think is actually maybe the most like sentient point of the entire piece, which is basically being like, we should just like chill the fuck out and figure this out because we don't know how bad this could go.
yeah.
Hey,
Or
Ryan,
good this could go.
have you seen Into Eternity?
I'm like scared to say
Do you
it.
know about this?
Dude, my brain started going in that direction. I looked over at what you were typing, and that's like my favorite documentary.
I couldn't remember the name of it.
That's my favorite documentary ever, man. That was like, yeah, that's an excellent documentary, and I think I know where you're going with
You want
this.
to give a quick summary of the film?
Oh man, so
Into Eternity?
yeah, I think it takes place in Finland or
Yeah, you're right.
in Finland.
Yep.
And they passed a law saying all nuclear waste that they create, they must also dispose of.
Okay.
And so,
What? Well, go ahead. Never mind. Sorry.
so it's a film about them disposing of this waste.
The problem is that waste cannot be or will not be safe for 100,000 years.
Right.
So, you know, at first glance, it's like, okay, that sounds sort of interesting or whatever. But what's fascinating about the film is it like brings up all these questions about scale and perception, and because what they start talking about like becomes very philosophical. Mm-hmm. So, what do you do with this? Do you bury it? And when you bury it, what do you do with it? Do you have a door that goes down to it? Do you cover it up? Do you let a forest grow over it? Do you make a sign, I think they talk about, warning people away? Okay, you want to make a sign. What language do you write it in? You know, like, because, what it's addressing, I guess, is like, what the hell's going to be looking at this in 100,000 years?
Right. I mean, if we found a 100,000-year-old archaeological site, we wouldn't be able to read anything that was there. We wouldn't be able to infer much of anything about that civilization or what they were doing or what the purpose of these structures, you know, like we don't know what a lot of ancient sites were even used for.
Yeah.
And if it's like a life or death situation, if you dig this up,
Yeah.
like who knows, like we don't have history recorded from 100,000 years ago. They're not going to know that, oh, there was a civilization that used this specific type of energy and it's harmful and
Or
this
if
was
we
their language and whatever.
if we came across this in some forest, like our society right now, we would 100% dig
We would open it up.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
no matter what the
right.
sign said,
And,
you
so,
know,
and
like,
so they get down to some like base level instinctual, like what is going to instill fear into humans in a way that's not going to go away in the next 100,000 years. But even that, like,
to prevent people from wanting to access what.
but
is
even then,
buried there.
curiosity is going to get the better of you. If we found a 100,000-year-old site,
like
That
a
had,
tomb
skull and
that said like "Do not
crossbones
enter."
or-
We'd be
Right.
like,
Yeah, right.
We're cracking that open immediately.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think. I mean, this isn't about Into Eternity, but that definitely gives some framework of like the.
I see you.
Finish my sentence.
Well, I only brought it up because we would have an extremely hard time communicating with ourselves 100,000 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
So then you take that to the universe is billions of years old. There could be a civilization that is not human, is very different from human, that is also millions or billions of years ahead or behind us.
Mm-hmm.
And the odds that we would have any way of communicating with them just seems so incredibly small to me. Like,
Yeah.
we don't know that we could communicate with our own species over 100,000 years. You extrapolate that to 1,000 times that, and a species that we can't even conceive of, there's no way we'd be able to like have a conversation with them and be like, oh yeah, we don't mean you harm. We're not expanding into the universe where we only kill 7 deer.
Yeah.
Like
this is our DNA.
Yeah, none of that would make any sense. Here's a record that you can play and it has frog sounds on it.
Yeah.
Like none of that's going to mean anything.
Yeah. Speaking of which, when we come back, we are going to talk about the ways that we have sort of tried to communicate, or it seemed to make sense to us to try to talk to ET, drunk ET, and yeah, in the variety of ways that our society has ventured into that possibility, whether it be futile or not. We'll be right back with the What If Podcast.
We want to hear from you. Send us a message. Email hi, that's hi, at whatifpodcast.com. Or leave us a voicemail at 612-246-4614.
Life does not stop and start at your convenience, you miserable piece of shit.
We're back. It's the What If Podcast. Oh boy, that was.
Put your headphones on so you can hear the air horns.
I don't want to hear the air horns. I'm so glad I had them off for the first run. Oh boy. Well, can we hear from ET again? I just want to hear from ET one more time.
E.T., E.T., be good.
Oh my god, I am really psyched to rewatch that movie. Speaking of ET, we're talking about extraterrestrials today. More specifically, what if we communicated with extraterrestrials? Not what if we found one in our backyard or we got yanked out of our bed and got an anal probe by one, but about the communication, the back and forth, the can you hear me now of the alien world.
Cool reference.
Thanks, man. It was both old and new based on the fact that they just resuscitated that dude from a life of...
Died?
His career did until he got back into cell phone commercials.
So how we've been trying to talk to aliens for a minute.
We have.
What have we tried so far?
Well, we have tried a lot of things. There's three.
It's really helpful.
I mean, it's true though. We've tried a lot of things.
How's the crop circle approach going? Is that worked yet?
Have
that's
we
the
tried?
aliens communicating with us.
I was just gonna say, dude, have we crop circled them? I don't think that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's normally how that phenomenon works.
No, but people have definitely made crop circles in response. There's the one where like they made the big alien person that we decoded and it maybe had DNA in it, so we made another one back to them that had our DNA encoded in it.
Okay. All right. That could work.
Come into an alien podcast not knowing about crop circles.
That's a bold
Whatever,
move, dude.
bro.
They'd have to have a pretty thorough telescope, or I guess if they visited us to put a
No,
crop
they
circle
came here to
down.
make the crop circle. Obviously, they only communicate by bending shafts of wheat. So we
Right,
tried that to
right.
communicate back with them.
Right. That's,
And now we know the secrets to building flying saucers.
now we know the secrets to bending more wheat.
It was that easy.
Wheat is actually very rare throughout the universe.
Right.
Kepler has detected exactly 0 other
Grant-
planets that have wheat.
Grand scheme, it's also detected 0 other planets that has pretty much anything we have.
Well,
But outside of bending wheat, we've tried a bunch of things, mostly related to, mostly related to like our traditional forms of communication. So like radio, audio, whatever. And I guess all three of us actually have some version of audio or radio that we're gonna like run down pretty quick. But ways that we've talked about, like as we're talking about in the last segment, just like the fact that does any of this shit work? Is it fucking valuable at all?
My favorite way of trying to communicate with aliens is do you have it up? 1969, the Discovery?
No.
It was
the
Discovery or Voyager?
Voyager.
Oh,
Discovery
Voyager.
is Space Odyssey, and so I think every spaceship is called Discovery.
It should be.
We're talking about
it
the
definitely
Voyager.
should be.
Yes, Voyager
records?
1 and Voyager 2.
Do you have it up? Can we play some of it?
I don't, but
Let's do it.
through the magic of editing, I can like skip these 30 seconds where I find it.
So Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are like still flying straight on a space. That's awesome.
Do we know that, or we just?
No, they for sure are. Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
we still have contact with one of them at least.
Yep.
It is. I saw a tweet today. Actually, it's. Please hold. It's like 15. Hold on. Talk amongst yourselves.
Please continue holding. But wait. So we lost contact with one.
We could say now that there is a lot of interesting content out there about this. We're not breaking this news to anyone. Radiolab is a great episode.
Yeah, we don't.
About Voyager
Yes.
1 and 2. Yes.
We are also not claiming to be that episode. And if you haven't listened to that, you should literally turn off our podcast and go listen to that.
And
instead.
also, like, prepare to bawl your eyes out when Carl Sagan's widow starts talking about it.
I have not cried on any other podcast before or after. And when there's a moment in that podcast where I cried.
Yeah, no, it's impossible not to. Voyager is currently 11 billion miles from Earth and still going.
Was this 2?
1.
How do we know that?
We still have radio contact with
we
it.
still have contact with it.
And it takes something, it takes like 15 hours, light hours or something to get back to us now. That was a tweet I saw earlier today that I couldn't find, but we still have radio contact with at least Voyager 1, probably both.
So
it takes 15 hours for us to get a radio signal to that thing and back?
I think just in one direction.
Or in one
actually.
direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so 30 round trip, basically.
Yeah.
So amongst other things on these spacecrafts, there's a golden record. And the reason the record's gold is because in space, don't quote me on this, but gold has a shelf life of like 1 billion years or something like that, which sounds like a really long time. But as far as like space travel, especially going as slow as these two are going, it's not that fast or not that long. And on this record, Carl Sagan and his wife, and probably a team of people, if I recall, were tasked with finding 40 minutes of audio to fill this record up that best represented life on Earth. And I generally agree with you that if we ever did come into any sort of contact with extraterrestrials, like, it's very likely we would not like be able to like communicate on any sort of direct level with them.
They probably don't own record players.
They probably don't own record players. But what I do like about this is like the what am I looking for?
The
here?
ethos of it.
Yeah, like the ethos of
sentiment
it. The the philosophical conundrum.
Maybe there's like an alien Bob Lazar out there who's tasked with reverse engineering a record player.
Yeah. Yep. He gets this piece of, to him, what is alien equipment, and goes like, I gotta make this thing do a thing.
And then he like finally figures it out, and it's just some Chinese dude saying hi to him.
Hey, that would still be like a thorough accomplishment.
So, yeah, I mean, the golden record is futile for sure, but it's also like I like the logic game you play with it.
Yeah,
It's a really good story too.
absolutely. Yeah. And I feel you, like the sentiment of even if you and I'm sure Sagan himself probably realized that it was like relatively futile to like actually go, someone is going to put on a pair of headphones, whatever that means, in space and like hear what I'm trying to say. He probably knew that, but still, I think as somebody who like had I mean, I don't want to speak for him and I don't know that much about him, but like had a pretty distinct belief in like both humanity and exploration and like the connection of exploration to humanity, like creating something that you feel like is representative of humanity in some capacity, maybe in any capacity, is still like both an interesting and valuable exercise.
Definitely. And he's answering, I mean, he's grappling with the same questions that we are right now.
So like on that,
because he didn't say like, the record wasn't like, hi, we're from Earth.
Hello,
I'm Carl Sagan.
Hi, alien
host
friends.
of the Cosmos.
So it's 55. It's greetings from Earth in 55 different languages.
Before you hit it, like, what are some, because I've listened to that episode a long time ago and I don't really remember like the high points. Like what are, like, give me like, rattle off a handful of things for me that you remember from, that were on the record that they put out.
Yeah, cool way to interrupt me.
I thought you were gonna
exactly
play.
that to ask Max what it was.
All right, my bad. I thought
Hey,
you were gonna
Spencer,
play.
stop describing that so I can ask Max to describe that.
I thought you were about to hit play on the thing.
Asshole.
Well, what is it? Both of you, either of you. What are the high points of that record? Because I don't remember.
Just saying, bro. It's greetings from Earth in 55 different languages.
That's how it opens?
I'm listing the things that are on. Just shut the fuck up for a second.
Carry on.
I'm listing the things that are on the
Carry
record.
on.
Greetings from Earth in 55 different languages.
Okay.
A bunch of different sounds from Earth. So like a tractor and a bus and a car and a train.
Okay.
And Morse code and a bunch of different animals. So there's sheep and dogs and wind and rain and ocean sounds and chimpanzees, heartbeat, laughter, footsteps, fire, people using tools. So it's just all different things that might describe humanity, but also just our planet in general. So other animals and nature and our climate. And I think there's also some music on it.
There's Beethoven's.
Yeah,
Ninth.
Beethoven, Bach. They put there was some, there was like a blues artist on there too. There's a bunch of different kinds of music, speech, animals, nature sounds.
Sounds like a lot for 50 minutes. I guess they probably
Most of them are really
blew through
short.
pretty
Like
quick,
like the the greetings are like a few seconds each. I'll play the Bengali greeting.
Namaskar. Bishe Shanti Hok.
That's 2 seconds. So apparently an alien is supposed to build a record player and a pair of headphones, hear that and be like, yes, human beings. Let me send them a message.
Damn, that's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, I think it should be more of like looked at as like a time capsule and like less expecting something back necessarily.
And there
or
were
even expecting like a legitimate understanding of any of that.
There were images carved into the surface of the record too. So it wasn't just the audio description. There was visual descriptions of like where we are in our solar system.
I kind of vaguely remember that now.
And some like mathematical principles and sort of like what we look like as human beings. And so maybe some other, there you go. There's the,
we'll put that in the
Voyager Golden Record.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes too.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that like, even though I was just bashing the first list of suggestions of how to communicate with aliens, that like I feel like universally perhaps this analog process would be like attainable by anything that were to come into contact with it. More so than like a CD or something like that.
Sure.
Real quick before we jump into that, I meant to bring this up a minute ago. Have I told you guys my Carl Sagan journals story? No?
Tell me.
No, I was going to say that's new.
So a friend of mine used to work as a lawyer, an entertainment lawyer for Sony. And she represented Sony Pictures, who made the film Contact. After Carl Sagan died, because Carl Sagan wrote Contact.
Did not know that.
Did not know that.
Really?
No.
Yeah.
Wrote the script for Contact?
He didn't write the screenplay, but he was like one of the writers of Contact. It was based on his work.
Definitely going to rewatch
The movie came out after he died, though. And so
do you have like leukemia or something?
I actually don't know what he died from.
Okay.
But his wife sued Sony after he died and after the movie came out. So
for what? If he was
for
a
not
writer.
properly crediting him for his work on the film.
Okay.
Which then she was the executor of his estate. Money should have been coming her way that wasn't for his work on the film.
Okay.
Anyway, she sues Sony Pictures. This woman I know is representing Sony in this case. Entered into evidence in this case are journals of Carl Sagan's. Because they were trying to see like, okay, did he have like dated journal entries where he had written out ideas, dialogue, concepts, whatever that made it into the movie that weren't credited to him. Yeah. Right. But it was like tons of journals because he would write daily, just like whatever was going through his head. And I guess there were like...
Which was lit.
Right. I guess there were tons of journal entries where he would just get super high and like write about space shit. And so there were like pages upon pages of like, he would start with a question of like, what if aliens evolved with wheels instead of feet? And then he would just go from there and write like rambly, high Carl Sagan shit about aliens with wheels. And it was her job for a couple weeks to read all of this. Yeah. And had these journals in her possession for like a couple weeks or something before going to trial.
Man, she should have snapped all those. Right? Oh my God.
Unfortunately, this was in like, mid 90s or whenever Contact came out.
Yeah.
So, but
man,
shit.
That would have been worth taking like 300 photographs and like keeping the negatives.
And losing your job.
No, keeping the negatives somewhere and then leaking them like 30 years later.
Yeah.
And being like, now we just heads up, we have Carl Sagan's like journals out here. I guess that's hella invasive.
But those exist out there somewhere. And also like Carl Sagan definitely liked smoking a lot of weed.
Cool.
Which is not surprising.
Good for him, man.
What a cool dude.
What a cool dude. He sounds like a good dude.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that he wrote any part of that movie.
Yeah. I don't know what his like official title was on the movie, but it was definitely based on his work.
Word. So Carl and his wife, just to tie that back together.
I can't remember her name. Do we know?
I can't remember it actually.
It feels shitty to just keep calling her.
That's true. I want to say her first name is Jane for some reason.
Do it.
And Drew. I actually don't know how to say her last name. Druyan.
Druyan, I think.
Druyan?
Yeah.
Druyan.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Carl Sagan and Ann Druyan were the ones who curated the Golden Record and were the ones who were participating in this case that Spencer was talking about. So that's one attempt, I guess. Should we rattle off the other couple quick? Do you want to run through your attempt?
Yeah, this one's weird and quick. So
for the record, these are not representative, I should say, of like the best attempts out there. These are just some that have happened.
Right. And maybe the more entertaining ones.
Yes.
All right. 1986, a few years after the Voyager probes had launched, Joe Davis, an artist and research affiliate at MIT, became concerned that no image of human beings had been sent out into space that accurately represented details of human genitals or reproduction. So we had sent images of human beings out into space, but it was always like a line drawing or nowhere in any of these
clothed.
Right. Okay. So that if you were an alien race that found these images, you wouldn't have any insight into like the actual biology of humans or how we reproduced or any of that. This was concerning to Joe.
I love that there's a dude named Joe who was like losing sleep. He was like, but the aliens haven't seen us naked yet.
They haven't seen our dicks.
They gotta look at our dicks so they know.
We gotta send some dick pics to the Greys. So Joe led a project. So here's the funny thing. He's concerned that there are no images out here. This is his solution. He led a project to transmit the sounds of vaginal contractions towards neighboring star systems.
The sounds?
The sounds, not images. You would think like, okay.
That's tasteful, I guess.
It's way less useful to, well, again, we're assuming that aliens are like us and can see and hear and whatever. So he starts this project to send the sounds of vaginal contractions to other star systems. So to get these sounds, he has to record vaginal contractions somehow.
Yeah.
So he contracts with some ballet dancers to somehow let him record their
vaginas.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have details on how he did that.
Yeah.
He just kind of like
I was gonna say
put,
I
put
could
a
ask,
mic up there and
Google that shit, dude.
Yeah.
So
It also seems extremely unbalanced to not be getting contractions of like a male organ.
also like what? How do the
Right?
sounds of contractions help clue you into how people reproduce? Like, that
don't-
doesn't seem very useful.
I would agree with you.
Anyway, so he was going to send these sounds out from MIT's Millstone Hill radar to a couple different neighboring stars.
Cool. I like Joe. Joe spent multiple days thinking this was a good idea.
He probably also spent a lot of MIT's money doing this.
That's true.
However, only a few minutes of a few minutes of audio was transmitted before the U.S. Air Force, which had jurisdiction over the facility, shut that shit down.
Joe,
So
quit sending pussy into space, Joe.
Joe only got about 3 or 4 minutes of pussy sounds into the ether
Joe.
before the Air Force was like, hey man, that just cost us $10 million. Maybe don't. But
To my space pussy, Joe.
those few minutes actually did make it to at least 2 neighboring stars by the mid-90s.
So some alien potentially out there has encountered radio signals of the sounds of vaginal contraction.
Yes.
It just seems really like, all right, go.
real quick. The last line of this article is, it is somewhat unclear what sort of reply we should expect.
Yeah. I mean, to say the least.
Because if they're returning the favor, some alien is going to hear it and be like, tight, this mic's going up my butt, and I'm going to send it back to the humans, and they're going to know what that sounds like.
Is this how we do this? All right, this is how we do this. Let's do this.
Like, it's not even, you would think of anything, maybe like recording the sound of people having sex or a baby being born.
Or even
like-
I can see like very anatomically similar. Like if you think about the idea that the anatomy of animals, however different intellectually we are from chimpanzees or ducks or whatever, like there are penises and vaginas on every species that are like basically every species that exists in our world. So I would think like even if you're going for like the most common sense approach, you could be like, all right, well, some sort of like visual cue or whatever of male, female, whatever genitalia, that would be like a cue. But the
thing goes in the hole regardless of what species.
Yeah,
and then
like,
a thing
hey, we
comes
do
out
that
later.
too.
Right.
Do you guys do like
Right.
a thing?
All of
in
our
a hole?
animals
We
do this
that.
thing.
Right.
What do you guys do to make more of your things?
But audio of that just seems like that could be, I could also be like plunging a toilet. And
Not a good use of donors' money.
No.
That's the thing.
no.
Like, if I heard that, I don't think I'd be able to identify what it is.
I sincerely doubt it.
And I'm a human being who has sex.
You don't have to brag, bro. Okay, we get it. You're like
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Is that on NASA SoundCloud? Joe Davis
that was
did
not
this wrong.
That was not a NASA project. That was an MIT and U.S. Air Force
Doesn't
project.
sound like a NASA project, honestly.
It sounds like Joe Davis pirating some MIT time is what it sounds like.
Maybe like on Kazaa, you could download that somewhere, but I couldn't find audio. for
LimeWire.
it. Yeah, it's probably on LimeWire.
Wow. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what we would do and what we should do as it relates to everything we've talked about so far, including kind of what we think we would and should put out there as far as it goes. If we get to talk to E.T. We'll be right back with the What Up Podcast.
And now, back to the What If podcast.
What do you guys think about what we could do or what we should do? And also whether or not any of it matters. You know, like the what if we could, like, is that even Is it even a question that fully matters at the end of the day based on like what we do or don't know right now? That's a lot of open-ended questions.
Garth Brooks box set. That's what I'm putting
exclusively.
On there. That's it. 10 CDs.
160 songs.
I'm gonna put a Discman in that bitch and just ship it out away from Earth.
The direction you have to go is like, what would we be stoked to find, out there? I think a little bit because
though.
I don't. Yeah,
that's like literally anything would be the most exciting thing we've ever done as a species.
I think music would be a nice direction to go in because you're not going to like try to explain something too complicated. This is where we are. Come help us, or this is who we are. This is like.
Well, and that also eliminates the problem of like, we don't necessarily want anyone and everyone to know where we are.
Show up. Yeah.
Right. That could be really bad for us as a whole.
Yeah, I do feel like music is a good place to start. Like when thinking about and prepping for this episode, I said this to Spencer earlier. Like I was thinking about stuff like Claire de Lune. Like I know you're obviously joking about the Garth Brooks shit, but I'm thinking about if a potentially friendly / potentially fucking angry alien race were to encounter our music, like what would we want them to hear? Like if they heard Tchaikovsky, would they be fucking terrified? Versus like hearing some like Debussy and being like, oh, that's much more like do the emotions that we receive based on music translate to an alien form in any real capacity?
What would, if it was purely up to you, like if you were individually tasked with, you've got whatever, a cubic foot to fill on the Voyager
of like
probe.
Vinyl.
What are you putting in there?
The concept of sharing different languages I think is really interesting, especially like the vast 50 different languages. And I don't know like what else you could do. I guess you could write some sort of mission statement of Earth and then have that said in a bunch of things. But I do, same to what you said, like the tonality, dialect, delivery, inflection of a bunch of different languages, while none of them would be understandable to any sort of being that could pick up audio, would I think be both representative and interesting of like us as a species to be like, we all said something, or we kind of like, united around a concept or something like that. And it's also just like who we are is like very much our language, especially when it comes to like actually communicating anything.
I wonder if there's a level that's not like the visual or like oral representations of us, but more so like could you put samples of different elements in, like would that give any more information if you got a shoebox that had 20 different physical specimens from Earth in it, but then you go back to like, well, how long does that last? But like, if you got that record, would the gold be just as interesting as the information that was on it?
That's a great question. Yeah.
Would 20 different elements that would last 1 million years be more useful and tell you more about our planet than like whatever we could inscribe on them or record on them somehow?
You're talking about like physical pieces of material
I just think about like if we were to send a probe to another planet, what would be the things that we would look for? And it would start on a scientific level first.
Man, I like just like envisioning your idea of like legitimately taking the periodic table of elements and creating a physical form of it, like the size of the palm of my hand, and putting a small version of each of the different elements into each of the little boxes, like a pill, like the little pill, the weekly pill containers. Do one of those and just put that in there. Like,
because the fact that made it to you shows an intelligence and an intention.
Right.
You don't need the artistic or the lingual representations of us to know that something intelligent got this to you.
Right.
We built this, we sent it in a direction, there was intention behind what we put in it.
Yeah.
I think describing like the physical existence of our planet would probably be more useful than anything that we could do as humans, and maybe be a little less like self-centered in terms of like, well, humanity is the only thing on this planet. If you looked at this planet from like a macro level, humans are a very small part of what's happening on it.
I do feel like in some ways the audio is like it's a little melodramatic. Like as much as I love it, and I really do, like I think the exercise that Sagan and Anne went through was like really beautiful. And I think they actually did a really good job. Like the concepts of travel and machinery. Like if they have any concept of machinery, maybe the sound of machinery connects in some capacity. Like I think those are all.
But it would be arriving to them on a machine. They
Sure.
would know inherently that we have technology and machinery because that's how the thing got to them.
Sure, but it's a diversification of that understanding. To understand that there's like a wide variety of.
Wouldn't any intelligent species be able to deduce that from the fact that we sent something out into space, though?
I mean, I guess.
What's the last line in that poem I sent you guys?
Will you read that
You sent
poem
me a
really quick,
poem?
actually? Yeah, it's
I
a
did send
really
you a poem, dude.
Actually,
I wrote it for you.
No, you didn't. I'll read it right now. Actually,
You have it?
Yeah.
Pull it up. You
Yeah,
don't need to read
cool.
the whole poem. I think the last paragraph is really in line with what you were just saying.
Yeah. So the author is Thomas Bergen, who was a professor of Romance languages at Yale. I'll just rattle the whole thing off really quick. It's pretty short. It's called For a Space Prober.
And this is on a satellite, I think.
Yeah. It was inscribed, right, on a
Yes,
satellite
it
that
was
went out
inscribed in
there.
a satellite.
And you're right. I think this definitely goes in line with casting a line out there. From time's obscure beginning, the Olympians have, moved by pity, anger, sometimes mirth, poured an abundant store of missiles down on the resigned, defenseless sons of earth. Hailstones and chiding thunderclaps of Jove, remote directives from the constellations. The celestials have swooped down themselves, grim bent on miracles or incarnations. Earth and her offspring patiently endured, having no choice, and as the years rolled by, in trial and toil prepared their counterstrike, and now 'tis man who dares assault the sky. Fear not, immortals. We forgive your faults, and as we come to claim our promised place, aim only to repay the good you gave, and warm with human love the chill of space. I do love that last paragraph. It goes back to the that idea of like just throwing something out there and trying to give a gift back. All right, well, shit. I think that's it for us. Max a Trillion, thanks for joining us on this sleety, snowy, icy night in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Anytime, guys.
Come back.
I hope it didn't get too like 2 a.m. Like radio station on in the Uber you get in. And
Hey,
you're like, what
I
are
hope
you
this-
listening to, dude?
Oh man,
Like,
I hope it is.
That's also just kind of how we do things.
It is.
I wouldn't worry about it.
I hope 2 a.m. Uber drivers are listening to us talk about.
okay, actually, I do too now. That
Yeah. What if we communicated?
That's the whole point of this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if we communicated with extraterrestrials? Max, thanks again. Spencer.
Until next time.
It's been beautiful. Until next time. This is the What If Podcast. We'll see you.
All right, squad. Be safe.
We'll be back next week with another episode of the What If Podcast. For show notes, transcripts, and links from today's episodes, visit whatifpodcast.com.